My sister called me a monster. My parents told the police I was having a psychotic break. Their crime, forging my name to sell my $2 million house. My crime, finding out. If fighting back makes me a monster, then let me tell you exactly how this monster got justice. My name is Lena. Before I share my story, I want to know you are here with me. Just say, listening in the comments, or let me know where you are. I love hearing how far my story reached. Don't forget to subscribe and join me on this journey where the unspoken feelings of the past finally find their voice. Sometimes even the smallest connection can make a story feel heard. Thank you. And now, here's my story. My world is one of sterile, calibrated silence. Here in my private geological lab in Denver, truth isn't a matter of opinion. It's a function of atomic structure. On that Tuesday, the truth I was focused on was nestled in the heart of a 10-carat blue diamond, an impossibly rare specimen from a new mine in Botswana. Under the electron microscope, its carbon lattice was a landscape of perfect, beautiful order. My work is to verify the authentic, to separate the real from the synthetic, the ethical from the blood-soaked. I find flaws. It's what I do. A soft ping from my laptop broke the silence. An email. The subject line made my focus blur. FW urgent issue. Deposit payment for Davenport, Chiet Vance event. It was a forward from my mother, Isabel. The original message was from a brutally expensive event planning firm in Scottsdale, written in the sharp, passive-aggressive tone of people who are used to being paid on time. It complained of a sizable, six-figure deposit for a wedding venue being declined and warned that the date would be released if payment wasn't rendered within 48 hours. My mother's note, tacked on top, was a masterpiece of willful ignorance. Lena, dear, could you look into this? Must be one of those silly bank system errors. I'm rushing off to a meeting for the Charity Foundation. Kisses. A familiar thrum of irritation went through me. A silly bank error. Right. This had all the hallmarks of another of their self-inflicted cash flow crises, gift-wrapped in an emergency and forwarded to me, the family's unofficial, unacknowledged financial backstop. I minimized the window. I had a flawless diamond to certify. My family's manufactured chaos could wait. It always did. That was my first mistake. An hour later, a video call request popped up. It was my sister Sloane. I answered, and her perfectly curated face filled the screen, backlit by the aggressive Arizona sun. She was in a bridal boutique, a cloud of white tulle surrounding her. "Lena, look," she said, skipping any form of greeting. "Isn't it a dream? It's a custom Galia Lahav. I'm having a bit of a crisis, though. I wanted peonies, but the florist says the shade of pink clashes with the bridesmaids' dresses. Can you even imagine? I imagined it quite easily. I'm sure you'll figure it out, Sloane." "Oh, I know," she said, with a dismissive wave. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Besides, the little things don't matter. Mom and Dad came up with a creative solution for the main funding. Everything's going to be perfect now." The line went dead before I could ask. But the words hung in the sterile air of my lab. Creative solution. In the Davenport family lexicon, that phrase was a warning siren. It was the term my father used before making a disastrous stock market bet, the one my mother used before buying a piece of art she couldn't afford. It almost always meant a problem was coming my way. I looked back at my laptop at the minimized email. The irritation was gone, replaced by the cold, heavy knot of suspicion. The call came 3 days later, a scheduled group video chat. My screen split into a Brady Bunch-style grid, of my smiling family, assembled on a cream-colored sofa that probably cost more than my car. Warren, my father, looking tanned and smug. Isabel, my mother, radiating the serene satisfaction of a woman whose biggest problem was her charity luncheon's seating chart. And Sloane, glowing with the kind of bliss only entitlement can buy. Lena, darling. My mother began, her voice dripping with practiced sweetness. We have the most wonderful news, and we wanted you to be the first to know. My father leaned into the frame, his smile broad. You know how you've been worried about the budget for your sister's wedding? Well, you can stop worrying. We've handled it. I stayed silent, my hand tightening on my mouse. They were performing? This was a carefully rehearsed announcement. Sloane delivered the final line, clapping her hands together, as if she'd just won an Oscar. We sold the Apex in Denver. We got an incredible price for it, way more than we expected. Now I can have my dream wedding without any compromises. The words didn't compute at first. They were just sounds disconnected from reality. The Apex wasn't just a house. It was my fortress, a masterpiece of modern sustainable architecture I had designed, myself, built on a plot of land I'd selected for its geological stability. It was my life's work, my sanctuary, from their world of superficiality. You what? My voice was quiet, dangerously so. Their smiles faltered for a fraction of a second. We sold it, honey, my mother chirped. It's wonderful news. The shock was beginning to recede, replaced by a cold seismic pressure building in my chest. Who signed the papers? The silence on their end was deafening. My father cleared his throat, regaining his jovial mask. Well, I handled the paperwork, kiddo. You know how these things are, all that red tape and you're so far away. We're family after all. It's a family asset. No, I said, my voice as sharp and precise as a diamond scribe. It is not a family asset. That house is the sole property of Heliogemological and Holdings LLC. My position is director. Your signature has no legal standing. So I will ask one more time, who signed my name? Before the crumbling facade of my family could completely disintegrate, a new face spoke. Caspian Vance, Sloane's fiancé, who had been sitting just out of frame, leaned forward. He had the handsome, earnest face of a man who had never faced a real problem in his life. I held on to a desperate, flickering hope that he would be the voice of reason. Lena, he said, his tone placating, I understand this is a surprise, but your parents explained it was a planned restructuring of family assets. My father's lawyers looked over the title transfer and all the paperwork. Everything seemed to be in order. Honestly, we're all just so grateful for your sacrifice to make this wedding happen for Sloane. And there it was, the cleavage plane. In geology, it's the plane of weakness in a crystal, the line along which it will split under pressure cleanly and irrevocably. In that moment, my last hope for an ally shattered. He knew, his family knew, they hadn't been duped, they were accomplices. I was utterly and completely alone. I ended the call without another word. The screen went black, reflecting my own pale, emotionless face. For a full minute, I didn't move. Then I stood up and walked to the display wall of my office, where my finest mineral samples were showcased under museum-grade lighting. A raw tourmaline crystal, its structure, a perfect hexagonal prism. A geode, rough and ugly on the outside, but split open to reveal a universe of glittering amethyst. Things of beauty and order forged under unimaginable heat and pressure. I felt that pressure now, not breaking me, but changing me, hardening me. I picked up my phone and dialed. Evan Hayes. My corporate lawyer's voice was calm and professional. Evan, it's Lena. I have a situation, I said, my own voice unrecognizable to me. It was flat, devoid of heat, as if I were describing a rock sample. It involves corporate fraud, wire fraud, and forgery. The target was heliogemological. The asset is the apex. There was a stunned silence on the other end. They. What, Lena? That's impossible. The house is titled to the LLC. They can't sell it. They did, I said, which means they forged my signature as director. That's a felony, correct? Several felonies, he replied, the shock in his voice turning into the sharp focus of a lawyer smelling blood. We can invalidate the sale immediately. I'll draft an emergency injunction to freeze the funds. Do it. I want every penny from that fraudulent transaction locked down before they can spend another dime, I commanded. Then I delivered the second strike. And Evan, that Scottsdale market analysis retainer Helio pays to Warren Davenport every month. Terminate it, effective immediately. Consider it done, he said. All financial support will be cut. I felt the first cold flicker of control return. My plan was simple. My path was clear. But then Evan hesitated. Lena, hold on. I've just had my paralegal run a preliminary search on the buyer. There's a problem. What problem? I asked, my newfound calm beginning to fray. The buyer isn't an individual. Evan said, his voice grim. It's a real estate company called Sonoran Peaks Development. The thing is, according to state records, this company is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Vance Corporation. He paused, letting the weight of the name land. Caspian's father. I stood motionless, the phone pressed to my ear. The man, whose son was about to marry my sister, was the one who had bought my stolen house. My simple, straightforward plan for justice had just slammed into a wall of concrete. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. It was a war against two families. And I had to wonder, were the Vances just another victim of my father's lies? Or was this a conspiracy that ran deeper than I could ever have imagined? The fight wasn't just to get my house back. It was to uncover the truth, no matter how ugly it was. Here is the continuation of the story written in first person as Lena. The knowledge that the Vances were involved didn't slow me down. It accelerated me. The moment the call with Evan ended, my fingers were flying across my keyboard, my voice low and steady as I gave him new instructions over my headset. Forget a simple injunction, Evan. File the suit. Today. I want Warren and Isabel Davenport named as defendants, and I want Sonoran Peaks Development named as a co-defendant, a party to a fraudulent transaction. I want every asset, every account, every line of credit associated with that illegal deposit frozen. I want them to feel the ground disappear from under their feet within 24 hours. Apparently, it only took 12. That evening, my father was celebrating at Mastro's Steakhouse in Scottsdale, a temple of obscene excess, where a single steak costs more than most people's weekly groceries. I can picture the scene perfectly. My mother laughing, my sister showing off her engagement ring, my father holding court, expansive and proud. He was likely telling the story of his brilliant real estate move. When the bill came, he presented his American Express black card with a flourish. The waiter returned a slight flush on his cheeks. I'm very sorry, Mr. Davenport, but the card has been declined. My father laughed, a booming sound meant to convey that this was a trivial absurdity. Impossible! Run it again! Your machine must be on the fritz. They ran it again. Declined. He offered another card, a platinum visa. Also declined. The jovial mask began to slip. He excused himself from the table annoyance, hardening his features, and stepped outside to call his private banker. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall for that conversation. I imagined the banker's voice, once obsequious, now turned cold and formal. Mr. Davenport, I'm afraid I cannot authorize any transactions. A legal hold has been placed on all your assets by court order. We flagged a recent 7-figure deposit, and all related accounts are now under an official investigation regarding the source of funds. Investigation. The word is a sledgehammer. It's the word that tells you the game is over. Back at their sterile white mansion, panic erupted. My father, his face the color of ash, paced the marble floors. True to form, my mother immediately deflected. It's the Vances, I knew it, she declared. That new money tech crowd, their banking systems are probably a mess. So unreliable. But Sloane, my sister, knew better. Her selfishness gave her a strange, sharp intuition when it came to threats against her own happiness. No, she shrieked, her voice echoing in the cavernous living room. It's not the Vances, it's Lena. I know it's her. She's jealous of my wedding. She's always been jealous of me, Dad. You have to call her. You have to make her stop. The irony was acidic. They had identified the right culprit, but for a reason so profoundly wrong, so deeply embedded in their own narcissism, it was almost laughable. This wasn't about jealousy. This was about justice. And they had absolutely no idea what was coming. The first tremor was followed by an avalanche. Sloane's phone began to ring, and it didn't stop. The calls were from the small army of vendors she had hired to construct her fantasy wedding. Genevieve, the impossibly chic wedding planner, whose voice usually sounded like dripping honey, was the first to crack. Her calls went from syrupy to panicked in the space of 3 hours. Sloane, darling, just a tiny hiccup with the Philharmonic's deposit. Sloane, the hotel, is saying the wire for the ballroom never arrived. Sloane, the floral designer, is on the other line, screaming about 20,000 Dutch peonies. He says, if he doesn't see the money by noon, your wedding will be decorated with cactus. I need you to handle this. The facade of the Zen-like wellness coach my sister had so carefully constructed online shattered into a million pieces. I pictured her in her pristine home office, surrounded by vision boards and rose quartz crystals, throwing a full-blown tantrum. She screamed at our parents, her voice raw with the fury of a spoiled child whose favorite toy had been taken away. You promised me. You said everything was taken care of. My wedding, my reputation. What will people say? Then the messages started flooding my phone. A barrage of texts from Sloane, each more hysterical than the last. I know what you're doing. You are a sick, vindictive monster. You're ruining my life because you can't stand to see me happy. You are pathetic. Fix this. Fix this now, or I swear you will regret it for the rest of your miserable, lonely life. I was in my lab examining a 3D geological map on my main monitor. I read her texts one after another and felt absolutely nothing. The emotional part of my brain that they had occupied for so long had gone dark. I typed a single reply, my thumbs moving with detached precision. All transactions related to the fraudulent sale of a corporate asset owned by Heliogemological have been frozen by court order. I suggest you contact your lawyer. In her fury, Sloane did something predictably foolish. She took to Instagram. On her professional account, with its hundreds of thousands of followers, she posted a selfie of her looking pensive and brave. The caption was a masterclass in passive aggression, sending positive energy and light to anyone who is dealing with toxic, jealous family members. Never let anyone dim your sparkle, especially when you are about to shine your brightest. Protect your peace, your family, drama. Positive vibes only. It backfired spectacularly. A few of her Scottsdale followers, the ones who knew the vendors, started connecting the dots. The comments section, usually a saccharine wasteland of praise, turned into a forum of speculation. Is this about the wedding deposits? I heard there were issues. Wait, my cousin works for the hotel. She said the Davenports' checks are bouncing all over town. Doesn't her sister own like half of Colorado? How can they have money problems? Her attempt to play the victim had just lit the fuse on her own public implosion. I didn't hear from my parents. Their silence was more telling than Sloane's screaming. But I did get a call. It came from a woman whose voice was so crisp and efficient. It sounded like it was generated by an AI. Am I speaking with Ms. Lena Reed? You are. Please hold for Mr. Marcus Vance's office. A moment later, the assistant was back. Ms. Reed, Mr. Vance requests your presence for a private meeting at his Phoenix headquarters tomorrow at 10 a.m. to clarify a misunderstanding. It wasn't a request. It was a summons. The Vance Corporation headquarters was a monument to corporate power, a skyscraper of smoked glass and brushed steel that looked down on the rest of Phoenix. The boardroom was on the top floor, cold, cavernous space, with a view that stretched all the way to the mountains. Marcus Vance was exactly as I pictured him, impeccably dressed, radiating an aura of ruthless control. Caspian was there too, looking pale and uncomfortable, a ghost at the feast. Marcus got straight to the point. Ms. Reed, he began, his voice smooth as polished granite. There appears to have been a significant misunderstanding. The Davenports assured us this was a consensual family arrangement. To rectify the situation and avoid any unpleasantness, we are prepared to offer you 15% above the sale price of the property for your inconvenience. He was trying to buy me, to write a check and make the whole ugly business disappear. I calmly slid a thin file across the vast mahogany table. This wasn't a misunderstanding, Mr. Vance. This was felony fraud. And my house is not for sale. The polite mask dropped from his face. He let out a long, weary sigh as if I were a particularly difficult child. I was hoping you'd be reasonable, he said, pushing a different file toward me. Perhaps you should review this before you make any final decisions. I opened it. My blood ran cold. Inside were copies of emails and a proposal draft dated 6 months ago. It was from my father, Warren, to Marcus Vance. The plan was far more insidious than just selling my house for wedding money. My father had offered the apex at a discounted price in exchange for two things: the full funding of Sloane's wedding and a future partnership for himself in one of the Vance's upcoming luxury real estate ventures. And the worst part, the part that made me physically ill, was the line where he offered up my name and professional reputation in the gemological world as a guarantee of integrity to attract high net worth investors to their project. The Vances hadn't been duped. They were predators who saw an opportunity. They knew my father was desperate. They knew the deal was shady. But the prize, my house, my land, my name, was too tempting to resist. I looked at Caspian. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He had known. All of it. Marcus leaned back, the architect of my family's ruin. You can pursue this legally, he said, his voice a veiled threat. It will be a long, ugly, and very public fight. Your family's name, your company's name dragged through the mud for years. Or you can take the generous offer, sign an NDA, and we all walk away from this unfortunate business. I walked out of that boardroom and into the blinding Phoenix sun, my composure held together by the thinnest of threads. The threat wasn't just about money or a house anymore. They were threatening my company, my reputation, the one thing I had built for myself, pure and separate from the toxicity of my family. Heliogemological was built on a foundation of ethics and verifiable truth. The mud Marcus Vance threatened to sling could destroy all of it. I called Evan as soon as I got to the airport. I relayed the entire conversation, including the details of my father's treachery and the Vances' complicity. Evan's voice was grim. He's not bluffing, Lena. They have the resources to bury you in litigation to bleed you dry. They'll paint you as the unstable, vindictive daughter and a volatile business owner. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of doubt. The sheer scale of the fight, the dirtiness of it was overwhelming. I thought about just taking the deal, sign the papers, take the money, and disappear. End the war before it truly began. I was tired, so profoundly tired of fighting. As I sat at the gate waiting for my flight back to the clean, orderly silence of Denver, my phone buzzed. It was a push notification from an Arizona gossip blog. Someone had sent them the screenshots of Sloane's Instagram post and the increasingly vicious comment section. The headline was plastered over a picture of my sister's smiling face. Scottsdale's wellness queen has $400K wedding on the ropes amid rumors of fraud and family feud. Seeing her playing the public victim, knowing now the depth of the conspiracy, she was a willing beneficiary of something inside me, snapped. The exhaustion vanished, burned away by a white-hot, clarifying rage. My father had tried to sell my reputation. My sister was trying to destroy it, and Marcus Vance thought he could threaten it. They had all profoundly underestimated me. I pulled out my laptop right there at the gate. I ignored the boarding call for my flight. Evan, forget the deal, I said into my phone, my voice low and dangerous. Marcus Vance wants to talk about reputations. Fine, let's talk about reputations. I opened a new email. The recipient was a journalist I knew at a major financial newspaper, a woman famous for her relentless, deep-dive investigations into corporate corruption. I attached 2 documents, a high-resolution scan of the fraudulent deed of sale for the Apex, and a summary of the consulting payments Helio had made to my father for the past 3 years. The subject line was 5 words long. Tip Vance, Corp. Implicated in corporate fraud. My finger hovered over the send button for a single heartbeat. Then I clicked. The battle was no longer confined to boardrooms and legal filings. I had just made it public. I had just dropped a bomb, and I had no idea how big the explosion would be. All I knew was that I wasn't going to be the only one caught in the blast. The article went live at 6:00 a.m. Mountain Time. I was watching the pre-market stock tickers on a second monitor when it dropped. It wasn't a bomb. It was a tactical nuke. The headline was a thing of brutal, beautiful simplicity. Vance Corp., subsidiary Sonoran Peaks, named in multi-million-dollar fraud case involving forged documents and Davenport family. The story laid out the facts with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. It featured a scanned image of the fraudulent deed, my forged signature stark and undeniable. It detailed the timeline and questioned the nature of the consulting fees paid by my company to my father. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. At Vance Corp, I was told later it was a bloodbath. The company's stock plummeted in morning trading. Marcus Vance, a man who prided himself on control, was facing a full-blown shareholder revolt. In a heated exchange that was apparently heard through the boardroom doors, he turned on his son. "You brought this plague to my house, Caspian, you, and your cheap grifting in-laws." In that moment, Caspian ceased to be his father's heir and became his liability. The implosion at my family's Scottsdale home was less corporate and more pathetic. A local news van parked itself on their manicured lawn. My mother's phone lit up with calls from the heads of her charity boards and the doyens of the country club, all feigning concern while secretly reveling in the scandal. Sloane's world, however, didn't just crack. It vaporized. Her Instagram, once a shrine to her curated perfection, became a digital pillory. Thousands of comments poured in, calling her a fraud, a grifter, a spoiled brat. The brands that had paid her to peddle their products began to flee. Aura Yogaware issued a statement about re-evaluating their brand partnerships. Serenity Teas announced they were committed to working with authentic, ethical influencers. Her empire of illusion built on a foundation of lies was wiped out in a single morning. Cornered, shamed, and financially crippled, they did what cornered animals do. They turned on each other. I heard about the fight from a frantic voicemail my mother left me, which I listened to with the detached interest of a scientist observing a chemical reaction. "It's all your fault, Warren," Isabel had shrieked. "Your greed, your pathetic schemes. You were the one who signed her name." My father, stripped of his bluster, had apparently screamed back. "I did it for her, for Sloane, for her ridiculous perfect wedding and her perfect life." And Sloane, hearing herself, named not as the beneficiary, but as the catalyst for the crime, finally saw a sliver of the truth. It was a truth too ugly for her to accept, so she deflected it, focusing all the remaining energy of her shattered world into a single, burning point of hatred. Me. I wasn't just the one who exposed them. In her mind, I was the one who had set the fire, handed them the matches, and built the house they burned down. Their final move was an act of such staggering audacity, it was almost impressive. Coached by what remained of the Vance's damage control team, my parents and a hollowed-out Caspian Vance walked into a Scottsdale police station. They filed a formal complaint, a narrative spun from delusion and malice. They claimed I was mentally unstable, that I had been financially abusing them for years, using my company as a weapon to control the family. They were trying to flip the script to paint themselves as the victims of a vindictive, manipulative daughter. The police contacted me, and I agreed to fly to Arizona to provide a formal statement. At Evan's insistence, I agreed to one final meeting with my family before walking into the station. It took place in a soulless, neutral-toned conference room at a law firm that smelled of money and desperation. It was a final, pathetic performance. Sloane, her face pale and venomous, called me a monster. My mother wept her tears, a well-practiced tool of manipulation she had used on me my entire life. My father, a broken man, pleaded with me to think of the family. Caspian sat in the corner, a ghost, in $1,000 suit, his eyes empty. I let them exhaust themselves. I let the accusations, the tears, and the pathetic justifications fill the room until there was nothing left but a tense, ringing silence. Then I stood up and connected my laptop to the large screen on the wall. "Before I go to the police," I said, my voice calm and clear, "I thought you should all see the rest of the file I've prepared. The reporter I spoke to was kind enough to hold this back, pending the outcome of today. The first file I played was an audio recording. It was my father's voice from 4 years ago. Lena, honey, I was talking to a guy at the club. He mentioned something called an LLC for asset protection. You're smart with this stuff. How does that work?" The second audio file played. It was me, a year after that, explaining the monthly payments. "Dad, it's just a consulting retainer. It's easier for my company's books this way. Consider it a bonus." And my father's laughing reply, "You're my guardian angel, kiddo." "Always." Isabel gasped. Warren sank into his chair. "But I wasn't finished. That was the old evidence," I said. "This is the new." I pulled up a different set of documents, a series of loan applications all denied from the last 18 months, all made out to high-risk lenders, all using my name, my credit score, and my social security number. It was blatant, undeniable identity theft. The room fell apart. My father made a choking sound. My mother stared at the screen, her manufactured tears replaced by the real, ugly face of ruin. Caspian looked at Sloane, his expression one of pure, unadulterated disgust. He stood up, adjusted his suit jacket, and spoke for the first and only time. "It's over, Sloane." Then he turned and walked out of the room, out of the building, and out of her life. Sloane was left staring at the empty doorway, a silent scream frozen on her face. The law, unlike a family, has little room for sentiment. Faced with my evidence, the Scottsdale police dropped their absurd inquiry into me and opened a criminal investigation into my parents. Warren was charged with felony corporate fraud, forgery, and identity theft. Isabel was charged as an accessory. The Vance Corporation, desperate to cauterize the wound, went into overdrive. They issued a public statement cutting all ties with the disgraced Davenport family, voiding the sale of the Apex, and announcing a massive settlement payment to Helio Gemological for damages. The day the money hit my company's account, I wired every last cent to a nonprofit that supports communities harmed by unethical mining operations. This was never about the money. Sloane sent me one final hate-filled text before deleting her social media accounts and vanishing into obscurity. My parents called from their lawyer's office, their voices, a desperate, pleading whisper, asking if I could help with their legal fees. I listened to the request, let the silence stretch for a moment, and said one word: "No." Then I hung up and blocked their numbers. I blocked my sisters. The cycle was broken. Weeks later, I stood in the vast, empty living room of the Apex. The house was mine again, legally and completely. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the silent air. Evan was with me. "So what now?" he asked gently. "You move back in. You won, Lena." I looked out at the Denver skyline, the mountains, a hazy purple line in the distance. I had won. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt quiet. The house felt less like a home and more like a museum of a war I never wanted to fight. "This house was my fortress," I said, turning to him. "A place to prove I was successful, to prove I was safe from them. But I don't need a fortress anymore." I held up my tablet. On the screen was a real estate listing. My real estate listing, status for sale. Evan looked surprised, but I saw understanding in his eyes. They didn't just sell a house. They sold a version of me that I was finally ready to let go of. The daughter, who felt she had to earn her place. The sister, who had to be the responsible one. The woman, who measured her worth in assets. My real value was in my mind, my integrity, my work. It was in the truth I could find in a stone. It was in the peace I was finally giving myself. The final scene isn't in a house at all. It's on a plane destination unknown. My phone is turned off. In my hands is not a legal document or a bank statement, but a geological survey map of a remote mountain range in Patagonia. A new project, a new beginning. I look out the window at the clouds below, and for the first time in a very long time, I smile. Not a smile of victory or of vengeance. It is the smile of being free. Sometimes life puts us through the fiercest storms, not to punish us, but to show us the difference between a temporary shelter and a solid foundation. True strength isn't found in fighting to hold up a collapsing house, but in the courage to walk away from the wreckage and build a new home on a foundation of self-respect and inner peace. That's all I have for now. Thank you for sitting with me through this story. If you've ever felt like family was both your safest place and your deepest wound, if you've ever been torn between walking away and holding on, or if you've ever wished you could fix what's been broken, or maybe you've never been through it yourself, but you simply understand and feel for my story, just comment yes below. Sometimes understanding compassion, or just admitting it, is the first step toward healing. Feel free to share your own story, or just listen. Sometimes that's enough. I'll be here. We'll be here. And maybe this little corner can be a place where stories like ours find a home. Until next time, take care of yourself. And don't forget, healing takes time, but you don't have to do it alone.